Welcome to Kalos's Gaming Table. I'm Kalos. Today I'm going to review another Battletech resource, though it's not for classic Battletech. I'm going to review the Battletech Alpha Strike Commander's Edition. Before we get started, if you enjoy the content that I make, please like, subscribe, and share this video with others. Also, ring that bell. This helps get more Mark I eyeballs on my channel and helps it grow. Thanks. Alpha Strike is a popular way to play in the Battletech universe. It is less granular than classic Battletech, which does appeal to a lot of players, especially those coming from other game systems. It is played in a more traditional miniature battlefield with terrain, true line of sight, and uses a tape measure to measure distance. For those that want to keep that classic feel, there are rules to play on a hex map. This is not an in-depth discussion of the rules or how to play Alpha Strike, more of a high-level overview of Alpha Strike. In Alpha Strike, much of the crunchiness of classic Battletech is abstracted. You don't have multiple weapons. Damage output is condensed to the damage done at 3 range brackets: short, medium, and long. Part of the damage is also based on whether the mech relies on ammunition or just energy weapons. Units will move a total distance as opposed to a walk-run move, and jump is at the same distance as well unless you have weak jump jets. Similar to classic Battletech, units in Alpha Strike have armor and structure to track damage taken. Unlike classic Battletech that also has multiple locations, Alpha Strike just has 2 tracks, one for armor and one for structure. Once you chew through that armor, you get into the structure. Units with XL engines will have less structure than those with the standard fusion engine to reflect the fragility of XL engines. The big selling point of Alpha Strike, for me, is that it's a much larger scale game. What do I mean by this? Classic is normally played as lance on lance or star versus star or some variation like that. Typically 4 to 5 mechs per side. With the way Alpha Strike's points are designed, it gives you the ability to play with a lot more units. Oftentimes it's a company, 12 mechs, or a binary, 10 clan mechs. The game can also run quite a bit faster, in some cases being completed in just a couple of hours. I have a pretty large mech collection. Some of those models will never see battle in Classic. In Alpha Strike, however, I can field them and sometimes even surprise my opponents. One thing that I have noticed in Alpha Strike is that some of the best units in Classic don't necessarily translate to great units in Alpha Strike. High damage output mechs in Classic might have their damage output lowered for ammo considerations. Having said that, you don't have to worry about tracking ammo in Alpha Strike. You might take a crit for ammo, and much like an ammo hit in Classic, that could end poorly for your mech. You can find the basic Alpha Strike rules online so that you can test drive them. You can also pick up a copy of the Alpha Strike boxed set, which contains a more robust rule set, as well as terrain, templates, and models. The models alone are worth the price of admission there. If you really want to take your Alpha Strike games to another level, the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is a great resource. It's a comprehensive manual with all of the rules and examples to play Alpha Strike. The book is robust and broken up into numerous sections, going into detail on how to play the game. The Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is produced by Catalyst Game Labs. It has an MSRP of $39.99 US. It is 212 pages long, not including the blank Alpha Strike card pages at the rear of the book. You can get the physical book or in PDF form. It is available at your friendly local game store, Drive-Thru RPG, Amazon, the Catalyst Game Labs website, Ares Games and Miniatures, and many other locations. I am reviewing my personal copy of the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition. It was not provided to me, and I will be as unbiased as I can be, though I really do enjoy playing Alpha Strike. The Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is broken up into the following sections. Introduction. Introduction lets you know what you will need to play Alpha Strike, things like miniatures, a tape measure, dice, and the like. It also goes over the various terms that you'll see throughout the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition. It breaks down the anatomy of the unit cards, explaining each section on the card. It gives basics on battlefield setup and the rules on how to play. Movement. Movement covers all that you'll need to know about moving your units around the battlefield. It goes over immobile versus stationary, moving through occupied space, and even optional rules such as hull down. It has a nice chart to show the activation sequence for unequal forces. Different terrain types is covered here as well. Want to move some infantry to an area for zone denial? There are rules for infantry transport as well as transporting battle armor. Combat. Under combat, the action commences. All units have moved, and it's time to roll the dice. Here you will find the rules for line of sight, terrain, obstacles, and all the modifiers that will affect your rolls. Your firing arcs are clearly shown. Satyr, the Alpha Strike version of Gator, is explained. Weapon range brackets are listed. Rules for physical attacks are provided, along with the infamous Death from Above. Now, unlike classic Battletech, firing declarations are made by a unit and then resolved, not all at once. All shooting continues to be simultaneous, but you don't have to declare all your targets before rolling dice. Damage. You've declared your shot, calculated your satyr, and rolled the dice, and you've hit. Well, now what? Damage tells you step by step how to apply your damage. First it goes to the armor, then the structure. Once you get into this juicy structure, the chances of rolling a crit goes up, with only 2 being a miss, 5 and 9, and I've become intimately familiar with how I know that. If you roll boxcars on a to-hit roll, that is also a potential crit. As you start taking criticals, your mech will start to fail, whether you take a weapon hit, a motive hit, or the dreaded ammo hit. The Alpha Strike Commander's Edition has a critical hit table for mechs, protomechs, as well as vehicles. Heat. Some criticals will cause your mech to generate heat. As in classic Battletech, heat is your enemy. Heat will make it harder to hit a target, it will lower your movement speed, and potentially cause your mech to shut down. Some criticals will cause your mech to generate heat. Can potentially intentionally overheat your mech and generate more damage, but it does take time to cool down. This section is short, but does go over the options on how to bleed heat. The battlefield. This section talks about, well, the battlefield. If you want to make things interesting in your game, go ahead and use battlefield support points. This section covers bombing runs, artillery strikes, and minefields, among others. The base target number, damage value, and battlefield support point cost is in a nice simple table. Not all battlefields are an open desert. There are numerous terrain types like jungles, mud, and even tundras. Each terrain type has some specific rules to help kick your games up a notch. There is a section for environmental conditions in case you are playing on a world with thin atmosphere or even vacuum. There might be high winds, so there's a table for determining those modifiers. Assaulting a Not 4 dropship, you can easily see the different arcs that the dropship has. Urban combat. Not all battles are fought in the wilderness. Urban combat is well documented, and city fighting is a part of the Battletech setting. Urban combat helps cover those battles. Are there buildings between you and your target? Are infantry hiding out in a building? Has an Op-4 mech jumped on top of a building? There are rules for destroying buildings. Running on a road and want to make a sudden turn? Go ahead and read up on those skidding rules. Depending upon how well you roll, you might collide with a wall. Special abilities. Many units have some sort of special ability giving them more depth on the battlefield. Things like Case, being able to fire indirectly, or being an all-energy mech. Units will often have multiple special abilities. This section goes over all of the special abilities available to units in Alpha Strike. These abilities are listed on the Alpha Strike unit cards. Special pilot abilities. Elite mech warriors are a big deal in Battletech. Special pilot abilities go into those details, and some are quite powerful. If you do plan to use special pilot abilities, make sure your opponent is aware so that they can plan to use them as well. There is a nice table that lists all of the SPAs, their cost, and a basic description. There are also more in-depth descriptions of each of the SPAs. These are more for flavor, please use sparingly. Special command abilities. Where special pilot abilities are for an individual pilot, special command abilities are applied to an entire lance or star. Some of them are pretty simple, but there can be more powerful ones like Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter can change the range bracket modifiers for shooting. Overrun Combat gives a major bonus to the player who won their initiative roll by a large margin. These SCAs are typically going to be added to a specific lance or star. Force Building. Force Building walks you through, step by step, building an Alpha Strike force. Step 1. Choose the point value total. This will help set the scale of the game. Step 2. Choose an era and faction. This will help narrow down the mechs that you can choose, whether they're Inner Sphere, Clan, and what era you're playing in. Step 3. Build a formation. This will allow you to build your lance or your star. Step 4. Select skills and modify pilot values. Everyone starts at a base value of 4, but you can either increase or decrease that at this step. Step 5. More formations. Go back to step 3 and step 4 until you have the number of mechs that you need for this particular battle. Step 6, select any special pilot abilities. Step 7, select any special command abilities. This section also explains the various unit roles, whether they are brawlers or scouts. There's a great table going over a standard force organization chart for both the Inner Sphere and the clans. There are multiple ground formation types, and this section goes over each one with a requirement on how to build each formation type. Scenarios. A lot of Alpha Strike games will be straight-up battles, a clash of steel and will. There's a basic kill scoring chart to help determine a victor. But if you want some more interesting and diverse battles, this section is for you. It has quite a few different scenarios from Capture the Flag, King of the Hill, and Reconnaissance. Each different mission has all the basic rules for battlefield setup, deployment arrangements, and the victory conditions. Looking at these missions, you can also mash them together to create your own mission. Have fun, just remember that you don't have to go with the standard slugfest. Optional rules. Optional rules is where you take the base rules, then add in some cayenne pepper and some wasabi to bump up the flavor. There are quite a few things in here, such as alternate munitions, more advanced infantry options, being able to capture buildings, and extreme long range. Want to field a lamb? There are rules here for that. One of my personal favorite optional rules is the multiple attack rolls. Rules as written, when making an attack roll, you roll a pair of dice, and if you meet or exceed the satyr target, you hit, and you do your full amount of damage. This does help speed up the game, but it's an all or nothing. When you hit big, and when you miss hard. With multiple attack rolls, you roll pairs of dice equal to the amount of damage that you do at that particular range bracket. You roll those, and for each one that meets or exceeds the satyr target, you will do a point of damage. You might hit with half, or you might miss with all of them, but it does feel a lot less swingy than the all or nothing of the base rules. Take a look at these optional rules, see what you might want to use, but remember, these are optional. Make sure to get the buy-in from your opponent so that you don't catch them flat-footed. Aerospace. The last section of the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is Aerospace. I'll be 100% honest, I don't think I've done more than glance through this since, at least as of this recording, my group does not field aerospace assets outside of battlefield support points. However, if you do want to use aerospace units, this section covers on how to deploy them, what they can be used for, and even air-to-air combat. There's a nice template for strafing runs here as well. Check it out, you might find that you like them. Index. The index is a comprehensive list of everything presented in the book, and the page number it can be found on. It's a great resource to look up any rule. It's well laid out and easy to use. Appendix. This is the last section of the book, and it has all of the charts and tables that were presented throughout the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition in one quick, easy-to-find place. One nice thing is it has some pre-generated force lists for different units like the Grey Death Legion and Clan Smoke Jaguar. This will give you some ideas on what a force should look like and what those specific forces use. Now, one thing that I do want to recommend, and this is good advice for any printed gaming books, is to check the errata. I'll have a link in the description below. I bring this up because things do slip through the editors. An older version of a rule might make it through proofreading. An example of this is on page 38 for transporting infantry. It states that units must mount up before a transport moves, and they can disembark at the end of the transport's movement. Savvy players can move infantry, especially battle armor, around quickly and then get them into position, mounting and dismounting in the same movement phase. There's errata that fixes this, with a part from that paragraph. Units cannot dismount the same turn that they mounted a transport, nor can they dismount from a transport that mounted units this turn. This cleans it up so that you can only mount or dismount in a particular turn. Again, it's just a good idea to review errata that a company puts out to make sure that you aren't missing anything that was updated. So who is the Battletech Alpha Strike Commander's Edition for? Alpha Strike players, obviously. Seriously though, it's for anyone that wants to play their most immersive game of Alpha Strike. This book contains all of the additional optional rules that can make Alpha Strike games more interesting and challenging. It's a well laid out book with plenty of examples and diagrams to make things clear. The Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is not required to play the game. You can find the rules free online, and you can also use the rules from the Alpha Strike box set. However, if Alpha Strike is your preferred way of playing Battletech, then the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition is a great addition to your game. You might not use all of the additional rules, but you will certainly be able to add more depth to your games. For those reasons, I do recommend getting the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition. Well, that's my review for the Battletech Alpha Strike Commander's Edition. In my local group, we'll swing back and forth, going from classic Battletech to Alpha Strike, and all of the extra stuff that the book provides makes it a great investment and resource. Do you play Alpha Strike? And if so, do you use the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition, or do you just play with the free rules online? What are some of the more surprising things that you found in the book? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next video.